Welcome to Speak Sex. I am your host, Eurydice, and I am here today with someone I admire for his advocacy and involvement in our public life. His name is Kevin. Kevin, who manages the Free Britney LA account. Before we start the podcast, I just want to announce that a team of super lawyers, Loeb and Loeb, was approved by the LA court today to represent Britney on her own behalf. So after 12 years of no legal representation for her other than what was appointed by the court or by her guardians, who don't represent her voice, the movement to free Britney brought on this legal defeat. So it's just inspiring and encouraging, and everybody just, believe in a cause of justice and speak up, start accounts, volunteer your time, go out there with signs, ask for justice, and it's one next to the other. When we are not me, but we're we bring on the change. So here is the representative of the Free Britney LA movement with us today to explain to us what has been going on with our superstar in captivity for the past 12 years. And what has been happening with Britney Spears is kind of like an extraordinary example of the legal ways in which the lives of women in America in the 21st century, even the most, famous and successful and rewarded women, can be constrained. So Britney, for those of our listeners who don't know, has been under a conservatorship for the past 12 years. Truth. Kevin will tell us more about it, but a conservatorship is something that's reserved for incapacitated individuals who cannot make decisions for themselves. And so basically she's been denied her human rights. She cannot see her children. She's not in charge of her finances. She is not in charge of her career. And yet, as far as I understand, she still works and makes money. So her brand is still huge, and all of the monies coming in are used or controlled by her manager, her father, and her lawyers. So, our show talks a lot about the patriarchy in all of its different forms. And I feel that this is one such example, where, we're in a time in history where women have almost begun to take it for granted that we are awarded, equal status in society. And yet there are all kinds of ways in which, the patriarch can take over, especially when there is money involved, and a fortune. So yeah, Kevin, would you tell us a little bit first? I'd like if you could to explain to our listeners the particulars of her case, what the conservatorship restricts her from doing.
Yeah, absolutely. So this really started in 2007. A lot of us remember Britney was going through a very rough year then. She was going through a divorce. She was going through a custody battle. She really, dealt with it very publicly. It didn't help that she was being chased by paparazzi everywhere. And her family's response to that was to petition the California courts for conservatorship. And so in early 2008, Britney's dad, James Spears, along with his business manager, Lou Taylor, orchestrated this conservatorship over Britney Spears, over her person and her estate.
And how old was she then?
Britney was 26 at the time.
She was 26 and she had 2 children.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah. She had just given birth to both children when she got divorced. So she was dealing with a lot. At the time, society, especially the media, the tabloid media, was not very kind to her. And so she, kind of acted out in ways that I feel, today, looking back on it, was really not unexpected, given the way she was treated. The Jamie was able to get this conservatorship put in place. And for those who might not know, a conservatorship is usually meant for people who are incapacitated, especially a probate conservatorship. So it's really for people who are maybe suffering from dementia at the end of
old people mostly.
Exactly. Yeah, at the end of their life. And so it helps the family facilitate financial transactions, for example. And so the point is they're not for someone in Britney's situation. Wherever you stand on whether or not she needed an intervention, a lot of people, agree that maybe she did need some kind of intervention. She needed some kind of support. But however you feel about that, this is not what conservatorship is used for. It's not basically to take over someone's life so that they can't make their own decisions.
Traditionally, but just to make a little, parenthesis here, now that this has happened to her successfully, I'm sure there are many other, parents or guardians who, are inspired to do the same with their, young children.
No, that's a good point. And that's a very unfortunate, consequence of the loopholes in the system. And that is something that, our movement, the hashtag Free Britney movement, is hoping to help change, is that people don't abuse this legal process for financial gain, because it does happen to a lot of people, not just Britney Spears. And so basically, because of this conservatorship, because of this legal process, Britney is not her own person. Her dad is Britney. Like, from a legal sense, her dad is, representing Britney. And so he gets to make all the decisions about, any business deals that, she were to enter, whether or not she works, even down to, whether or not she's allowed to leave the house or drive a car, even though she has a California license and can drive.
He basically found a way to move the clock back 60, 70 years, right? Erase everything that feminism has achieved and get back to how things were in the olden days. But meanwhile, he gets to take advantage of the work that she does that she could only do as a liberated woman, right? So
yes,
it's a win-win for him.
Exactly. No, you raised a really good point. Is this is not only a way to, control her behavior, but to, make millions and millions of dollars in the process. And this has been going on for 12 years. And that's what is it's surprising to a lot of people, is that, this very unjust situation is happening right under our very noses. And I think a lot of that has to do with the way we as a society, back in, 2000, or just in general, we as a society accept that, that a man controlling, a woman's behavior is acceptable. And, especially, after the way people responded to Britney's behavior in 2007, they felt like it was a good thing that he stepped in and, and controlled her behavior.
Yeah. I mean, from what I remember, she was just going through a process of, rebelling and individuating, which took her a little longer than some of us. but it does happen anytime in your 20s, right? Trying to find your own identity separately from those who raised you is awkward and not pretty, and especially not pretty to them, because it's a full-on rejection of everything that you've been taught is right. And you gotta do what's wrong before you can figure out what works for you and what's your truth. And it takes a lot of trial and error in order to kind of take charge of your own narrative, and it takes time. And I feel that she didn't want to be. She wanted to kind of because she was a performer, she wanted to kind of on stage or in front of the cameras, embody her independence, her freedom, and it backfired, terribly. But one of my questions is a lot of celebrities, especially, in that industry, have issues with drug use or, acting out. I mean, since before, since Elvis, basically all through, the history of whatever it was, the Beatles or the Stones, right? So it's pretty much part of the package a little bit. So I'm surprised that, do you think that it's because of her gender? Do you think that that's one of the reasons that she has not been allowed to be a, normative celebrity?
100%. I think that you brought up very, very many good points. Why this situation, happened and why it's been allowed to go on. Like you've pointed out, a lot of celebrities act out in their 20s. I would like to point out that Britney broke no laws. That, is something that people overlook. And what makes this situation so egregious is that she was basically stripped of her human rights. She was stripped of her right to an attorney. There are people who, prisoners, murderers, they have more rights than Britney Spears does. The people who have committed crimes, they have a right to an attorney to defend themselves. That's what makes, that's the foundation of our country. And Britney was stripped of those rights, even though she had committed no crimes. And so, it's really, I think it really highlights the double standard, between male celebrities and female celebrities, the way, a lot of other celebs have acted out. They have, mugshots. There are celebrities with mugshots who are not under conservatorships. So I would just ask, anyone listening, if you feel like, that this situation is a good thing, that it's okay that Britney is stripped of her rights, ask yourself why you feel that way, and why you react so strongly to the things she did. When she was 25, 26 years old.
Yeah. And, for me, at least, I don't even understand, what kind of judge. So my first question would be, who are the judges? Who is in charge of making these decisions and actually confirming on behalf of the American legal system that this is okay? That she doesn't get to pick her own lawyer, but her lawyer is appointed basically by the system, by her guardians, or, and at what stage does she, get to, are there any tests or some kind of steps that she has to take to be considered, once again, kind of capable of making her decisions? Because it seems to me that if they're in charge of her medical condition, right? And let's say, I don't know if that's the case, but let's say keep her medicated. And then at the same time, they, choose the lawyers who represent her, and there is so much money for everybody to get paid, right? Lawyers, managers, doctors, I'm sure whoever is in the house where she lives, then without specific, legal kind of like, test points that she has to pass, this can go on indefinitely, right?
Yeah, you're getting at the heart of what's a very broken system, and that's the probate court system in California. And that is something we are working to change. So a lot of people, might be thinking, well, this had to go through doctors and lawyers and judges, so it must be legitimate. And I'm here to tell you that is simply not the case. If you look at the facts of the situation, like Britney Spears should not be in a probate conservatorship. It is simply that the system makes it too easy for this to be established. And so, yes, it is true that it went through, a doctor who declared that Britney was incompetent to hire a lawyer. And that a judge signed off on it. So, the name of the doctor is Dr. James Spar. The name of the judge is Riva Getz. Her court-appointed attorney that was appointed by the court, Sam Ingham, she was not allowed to hire her own attorney. And so those are all really egregious limitations of Britney's rights. And like, it sounds outrageous, but that, all of these people could be connected in this corrupt scheme. But you have to realize there is so much money involved. There's so much money involved that that there's really no incentive for these people to do things by the book.
And so what's the situation with her husband, who, again, I don't recall all the details, but I, don't remember him, kind of being portrayed as an amazing, fit parent. But he has the two children, right? All these years.
Yeah, so she had 2 children by Kevin Federline, who, they're now divorced, and he has custody of her children. And so he's mainly stayed out of the public eye since the conservatorship was put in place. But we believe that that her custody arrangement was used against her. So that is something that's been speculated for many years, is that because she basically agreed to the terms of the conservatorship because they threatened her with not being able to see her children. And that just is so inhumane, and it's weaponizing her motherhood against her.
Exactly. It's weaponizing her motherhood against her, which is, in my opinion, looking through history, through thousands and thousands of years, really, of the, submission of women, and the way that they are dominated by the patriarchy, it always comes down to that, once a woman is pregnant, her nourishing instinct takes over, and, her whole being is telling her to do whatever is necessary for her children to survive and be well. So, she becomes willing to make, a lot of compromises, and that's, how basically, the system, the culture that we have been socially conditioned in has succeeded and survived. That's it. It's exactly that. The moment of the woman becoming a mother. Yeah. So does she get to see her children? Does she have visitation rights?
So right now, she has 30% visitation. That is the understanding. It is
unsupervised or?
No, supervised. Supervised. Yeah. So it's always supervised. So actually, last fall, her ex-husband took out a restraining order against Britney's dad, who is her conservator, because her dad attacked one of her sons. So because of that, because of that restraining order, Britney gets to see her kids less, and it's not a result of anything she did. And so that's another example of how this situation is unjust.
Yeah. You see, like one man, the current father of the children, he puts a restraining order on the other man, who is the grandfather of the children, because they're fighting over like who is the patriarch right now, who is in charge of the next generation, and then the dynasty and the family. And then there was, am I correct in remembering that she tried to have her sister take over instead of her father, her conservatorship, and that didn't work out?
That's a little complicated. So there is a trust that Britney set up a long, long time ago. And since the establishment of the conservatorship, that trust has changed hands several times. There's a lot of money at stake. Over $600 million, we believe, is at stake. And so it recently came out that her sister, Jamie Lynn Spears, is one of the trustees. And so that is just something that we're keeping an eye on. We hope that her sister's motives are pure, but when there's that much money involved, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, no one, I don't think there are any exceptions when there is so much money involved. You yourself don't know your own authentic choice anymore.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's what's kind of sad about Britney's situation, is she doesn't know who to trust.
Yeah, it seems like there is no one she can trust other than, the people she has no access to, like all of you. And I will come to that in a second, but I have one more question. I also heard that her manager tried to have a similar conservatorship enforced on Lindsay Lohan. Is that true? And Lindsay escaped somehow?
That is true. So after, Lou Taylor, who is the business manager that Britney didn't choose, I want to point out, after she put Britney under conservatorship, she saw how successful and how lucrative it was for her. So she tried to convince Lindsay's parents to do the same, because Lindsay Lohan, as we remember, she also had, very public acting out, shall we say. And so I think she saw that as an opportunity, the same way that she did with Britney. But then Lindsay's parents did not go along with it. And so she was not successful. Lou was not successful in getting that conservatorship.
Yeah, that's good.
But it's sort of sinister how that's her business model, is to look for troubled women and take advantage of their situation to profit.
Yeah. And, I believe, I have not been in that experience myself because I would not want to, but I believe that, when you have someone in their formative years, their teenage years, in the public eye, performing, in my opinion, it's definitely exploitation. It's a working child, which really should not be legal. It's a working teen. But the extreme exposure, that fame involves, warps the mind. So it's already a difficult time for everyone, going through your teenage years, both hormonally and, mentally, as you change. There's so many changes. First, you're faced with a new body that is like a grown, woman's or men's, but woman more, more particularly because it changes so fast. And the body changes before the mind catches up, right? So like the frontal lobe takes until like you're 25, 26 to fully develop. But meanwhile, you have like 10 years or 12 years of like a fully blown, curvaceous, highly sexualized body. That, is ready for motherhood. So that disconnect, which I feel like in our times is even longer because it takes longer for us to kind of like, mature in our society. that disconnect makes all young people vulnerable to exploitation, but particularly those who, perform, because you don't know who is mirroring you. It's very hard for them to know who they are. We all kind of learn based on how we are perceived, and the connection between what we think of ourselves and what we think others see of us. But I can't even imagine, when you have like millions of eyes on you, how destabilizing that is. So if anything, it seems to me that, young celebrities need a lot more, psychological care and support. And, basically like, some sort of daily therapy, even more so than like a daily, whatever, vocal coach or, working out partner or whatever they get. In order to deal with all that. Yeah. So
I would just say,
there we are, she has been victimized because of it. And it's possible that it can happen again and again now.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you raise a really good point that, she probably needs some kind of support because of what she went through. And so the question is then, if they really wanted to help her and protect her, why didn't they go that route? Why didn't they try to get her that support instead of kind of taking over her life and taking away her rights? And so that is sort of why we're arguing that this does seem to be more about money than it is about her protection.
Yeah, and they're taking away from her right to grow up and live a life and be a mother and make her choices. And so
100%.
What's this situation with her careers in the past 12 years?
So she's been made to work in the past 12 years. So right after this conservatorship was put in place, she made a guest appearance on the show How I Met Your Mother. The fall of the same year, she released a new album, and a few months after that, she went on tour to promote that album. And I think if you know about what a probate conservatorship is, then you would sort of see the disconnect between, they're telling the court that this person is incapacitated and therefore we need to take over her life and her money. But then they're making her work and not just do, any work. They're making her perform stunts on stage. And so there's this huge disconnect between, what they're claiming to the courts and what they're pushing out to us publicly. Right. Yeah. And so that happened. She's actually released 4 albums since the start of the conservatorship. Gone on 4 world tours. And I think throughout all that, they really took advantage of the fact that we didn't really understand what a conservatorship was. And so they were misleading the fans and the public into believing that it was a good thing that Britney was working. And meanwhile, they're pocketing all of the revenue from those projects. And so that's why when this movement blew up and we kind of, saw what was going on, that's when, when Britney herself decided that she would stop working and that some of the fans, decided that we should not put any more money into the projects that they're pushing out.
Yeah. That can be my next question, which is how can people help, other than basically spread the word about Britney and also about the fact that this is, a law, it's something that can happen. But how can they help? I know that you organize rallies, right? Mostly in LA. Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. So we try to, it's hard with the pandemic now, but we do protest in person in front of the courthouse during Britney's conservatorship hearings. And that's just a way to raise awareness about Britney's story, about conservatorship abuse, so that it doesn't happen to other people. And so, if you are in LA, I encourage you to come join us at the protest if you're comfortable. But spreading the word online is very, very helpful too, because so few people know about this issue. And so even just getting more people to understand what a conservatorship is and understand conservatorship abuse can help prevent, other people from being taken advantage by the system. So don't underestimate the importance of spreading the word online.
So share it on your social media, make a post about it, and boycott her current brand, right? So just
yes,
out of love for Britney.
Exactly. Right? And it's very controversial because we want to support Britney, the person. And so I would just encourage, if you love Britney, then just find a way to celebrate her without paying, into the conservatorship, because Britney only gets an allowance of $1,500 a week. And, everything else is managed by the conservators.
There is 600 million. That's insane. And there is a museum, you said, that her handlers, her keepers started a Britney museum.
Yeah, so there was a museum, a pop-up museum, which, I have to say it's for someone as iconic as Britney, it's a cool idea to have a museum dedicated to her. But unfortunately, Britney herself had no say in it. And so this museum opened it was called The Zone, and it opened this January in Los Angeles. And a lot of Britney fans, bought tickets to go because they wanted to celebrate Britney. But, it came out later that Britney, we saw that Britney did not, attend. She never showed up to promote the museum. And so we learned later that she actually refused to do that because she is protesting the conservatorship. And so I would just ask everyone to be mindful about where your money is going and to make sure that you really are supporting Britney the person.
Yeah. So the goal of this movement, what you're hoping for the future, is for her to be liberated legally by. Is there something? I guess first she would need her own counsel. Whom she chooses, who represents her interest and who is equipped, who specializes in conservatorship and is equipped to fight this all the way to the top courts, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So the ultimate end goal would be to terminate the conservatorship because we don't feel like a conservatorship is appropriate in any way for her situation. That does not mean we think she shouldn't have support. She absolutely should have support. She should, if she needed, she should have, a therapist. If she needed, she should have a business manager to manage her money. But she should be able to make the decisions, all of those decisions. And just because someone else feels like the decisions she makes is wrong, doesn't mean that they have a right to make those decisions for her. Exactly.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. We all make wrong decisions every day.
We all have a right to make mistakes.
Exactly. Yeah. We have the right to our human condition. That's part of it, but what we want is support from each other and that feeling of, being one, being accepted regardless, that ideal of the unconditional love. And that's, exactly what she has been denied, so adamantly for so long. So how did you get involved in this? And how did you, take it on as one of your causes? Because I find it very admirable that you do.
Oh, thank you. I've been a Britney fan for a very long time. I became a fan when her first song, Baby One More Time, came out. That was 21 years ago. and almost 22 years ago, in 1998. So I've been a huge fan of Britney, yeah, since then, and just always followed her career, through the ups and downs. And so I found out about this movement, when it blew up, because of the Britney's Graham podcast, last April. So April 2019, there was a podcast, Britney's Graham, who, released a voicemail that revealed a lot of, revealing details about what Britney was going through at the time, and sort of woke us up to how serious the conservatorship was. And so we've been advocating to end the conservatorship since then. And I really got involved because I heard about the rallies, and I'm in LA. And so I felt like, I could really make a difference if I showed up to one of the rallies. And, I got to connect with other protesters after I went, and we've just stayed in touch. And that's sort of how our movement just grew. Yeah.
And you're managing the Instagram account, Free Britney LA.
Yes. And so I actually held off a while on making that account. I was, doing a lot of my advocacy on my personal account, but I saw that, a lot of people kind of looking for more information were, coming to me, and, it's just pictures of, my dogs and my lunch. And so I decided to create the account Free Britney LA to sort of consolidate information to, spread the word about the rallies, and, just report on news about the conservatorship and things that are going on behind the scenes. So yeah, the account is Free Britney LA on Instagram and Twitter. And
that's a volunteer work on your behalf.
Oh yeah, completely volunteer. I don't get paid for this at all. So I think a lot of us in the movement, feel like we've definitely done enough work to get paid, but we're definitely doing it out of passion. So
that's beautiful. I think that's beautiful. And, I really love and respect that, because I think in the end, it's the ultimate mark of, belief. And it has to come without the expectation of like financial reward, so that the reward is actually moral. Yeah. And I think that in our society these days, we keep confusing like financial and moral a lot. So, we feel that someone who makes money, that's good. I mean, if you go to the very basic kind of like need to work, it seems we're conditioned. It's presented to us as if we don't work, we don't have the right to be alive. We lack human qualities. We lack our human value. So to kind of separate our human value and our support for each other from financial reward, I think is very useful, as part of the way we live. Right? It's just kind of like, it's enlightening. Because then we get to know who we are and what matters to us, and, what we're passionate about. And I hope and believe that you will bring change. I really do believe that you will bring change. I will definitely spread the word, but I also, want to commend you on having a cause and pushing it forward and believing in change, right? And believing in making this a more equitable society. And I hope that, more of our listeners, whatever they feel strongly about, whatever it may be, instead of kind of dedicating our social media time to like, pictures of ourselves, editing our selfies, or this idea of like branding ourselves, I think that it's, that time can be, used so much more productively and rewardingly, toward the cause that we feel strongly about and are, have some passion for. And that actually, I think, rewards us, right, more in the end, because it rewards the human in us. much more than like the superficial kind of like, unconscious, just do what everybody does part of us. So I love that, you are working for her cause. I love that you're supporting her. It's so important that we learn about what the legal system can take away from us, particularly because, people need legal representation.
Word.
So it's important for all of our listeners to know, like, whenever you get in any trouble, you have to get your own lawyer. Anything that seems in any way suspicious, you gotta get your own representation, someone to speak for you, whom you trust before it gets out of control.
Word.
It can happen to a young woman at the prime of her life and her career. It's just, surreal. And it tells us a lot about the world we live in.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it does. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing the message on your platform.
Time. Thank you. I loved it. And, we'll stay in touch. I will, promote this, and then hopefully there will be some good news along the way for Britney.
Yay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kevin. Take good care. And everybody out there, until next week, speak sex. Be still, my heart. Another piece of good news from our sponsor, oldplayground.net. They have a special right now where you can join for 3 days for $3.99. You can start a profile and you can navigate the site. It's the biggest, most inclusive, most contemporary lifestyle website, in English at least, that we know of. And you can have your own exclusive content. There is a big wall with videos, information, podcasts about sex and intimacy topics, and all kinds of open people with whom you can communicate across the country. So give it a try. This is the chance to do so. And love you all.
If I could make love incessantly, I would be God.